What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of GR4 Sportsbar here on YouTube. This is kind of my first foray into making some real solo content on the platform. If you guys are coming here from my TikTok, welcome, thank you. We are going to be still doing all of our beer reviews here on the YouTube channel as well, all the stuff that is uploaded on TikTok. And for those of you guys who are finding me for the first time, this is not my first foray into making sports content, but this is a solo project. For now, we'll talk about getting some guests in the near future, I'm sure. If you guys are looking for some more NFL-specific content with me and a couple of the other guys, make sure you head on over to TBQ Sports on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Now, a little bit of an intro for those of you who are mainly here just for the sports content. It's called GR4 Sportsbar. For a while, I was doing beer/drink reviews with my sister, actually, on TikTok, and it was just a ton of fun. Beer is something that I really like, I'm really passionate about, and it's just something else that I feel like I can bring and I can share with, you guys out there who are coming to me maybe just for sports, but hopefully that this can get you guys into kind of, exploring a bit with different beers. So, with this show, every single episode, we are going to start off with a beer or drink review. If you guys have any specific drinks, or doesn't have to be alcoholic at all, if it's something that you guys just want to see me give a shot, make sure you put that in the comments or hit me up on Twitter at KingGeorge94. So for the first episode, as you guys can see, wearing a baseball jersey, raise up, completely biased with probably a lot that we're going to say today, as we're talking about the Major League Baseball trade deadline that is coming up in about a week. I am recording this on Tuesday night, so 7 days. 7 days from recording, that is the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And for our beer review, we are going with this right here, Irasu Rice Lager from Wiseacre Brewing in Memphis, Tennessee. I have had this beer before. Absolutely delicious. I love it. Only 99 calories for those of you guys watching your figure or if you're cutting. And 4% ABV. We're going to do a quick pour into the glass. And I'm going to keep a lot of that in the can because I just like drinking out of the can. I don't care what you guys think. I'm going to do what I want. So, really, really nice pale color there. Very, very, like a very pale yellow. Let that refocus. I mean, just a nice crisp lager. I mean, I know what this tastes like. I love it anyway. It's a little bit different than I think what most people think from a traditional American lager. It's a little bit drier. Really, really crisp. I mean, talk about a perfect, summertime outdoor beer. That right there it'll get you there, and it's just crisp and refreshing. Whenever all these commercials talk about that, this is something that they should be talking about. If I have to give this a rating, to me it's a solid, strong like 8.5 out of 10. I mean, I kind of wish I could find it in 6-packs without having to go to the tap room itself over at Wiseacre, but it is absolutely delicious. And segueing right along from our rice lager beer, which Wiseacre themselves has a bit of that inspiration from Japan, and we're talking about the Major League Baseball trade deadline. This has to be one of, if not the most interesting trade deadline I personally have experienced as a baseball fan, and it all comes down to one man, Shohei Ohtani, the Japanese phenom who, I mean, there's not much else to say about him other than just what he does on the field, on the diamond. He is absolutely electric in everything he does. He's one of the best pitchers in the American League, crazy strikeout numbers, and one of the best bats. He is truly the modern day Babe Ruth. And part of what I find interesting with the way that this trade deadline is shaking out is we have a lot of these teams contending both in the American League and in the National League that aren't your traditional frontrunners. They're, namely the three that are kind of reported to be inquiring about Shohei, are three teams that we don't always anticipate or don't always expect to be in the running for this type of player, especially at the trade deadline. And the three that come to mind, and we're going to break down each one a little bit individually. We've got the Baltimore Orioles, currently number one in the American League East. Your Arizona Diamondbacks, we're talking near the top of the NL West, and the Tampa Bay Rays, who have been killing it up until the All-Star break just about, but they have struggled mightily. My Tampa Bay Rays, which I hate to say that, but I have to be real and upfront with you guys. We have struggled. The team is just having to try and scrape by for wins since the All-Star break and in this month of July. And the fact that these three relatively small market teams, I mean, at least with the Rays, absolute small market team, the Orioles tend to, especially over the last couple years, where they've built this squad the right way. They've been operating as a small market team, even though I'm very certain the Orioles have the funding and have the backing and the money to make a move like this happen and potentially stick longer term than, say, the Diamondbacks or the Rays. That is not how this Orioles organization operates. And as we're talking about them, we're just going to get started. Right now, they lead the American League East by 2.5 games, if I remember correctly, after taking 3 out of 4 this past weekend against Tampa Bay in Tampa, in Florida. And this Orioles team it's packed to the brim with young, exciting talent, just top to bottom. There is so much that they do well. I mean, just Gunnar Henderson, Colton Cowser, Adley Rutschman. You've got a relatively, with your bullpen, I mean, you've got Bautista and all those guys. And looking at just the rest of their team, I mean, Cedric Mullins right now on the injured list. That team is just so much better with that man in the lineup. He is truly just one of the best outfielders in the American League, let alone, in Major League Baseball. Truly one of the best. So top to bottom, you're getting production out of almost everybody in this lineup. You've got one of the best farm systems in Major League Baseball. And I have to think that at the very least, some of the top end of that farm system is off the market, is off the table. The Orioles are not willing to go out of their way and, break down some of that farm system that they've spent the last 5 to 6 years of mediocrity building. And that's really, really similar to the normal way that, the Tampa Bay Rays have built this team and built this organization, this structure, this franchise, really. They're both very similar right now in that they're built the right way. They're built from the bottom up, and they are built using just good scouting, one, just good fundamental baseball, too. And we're talking about guys that are homegrown, home development, a lot of home cooking with both actually all three of these teams, I should say, with Baltimore, Arizona, and Tampa Bay. I'm not going to count out the O's because I think with the way that I don't want to say rebounded, because they've been solid. They've been keeping pace up until this part of the season where they have exceeded the Tampa Bay Rays pace and now lead the division and the American League. They have kept pace up until this point. They are now exceeding the pace as we're getting more production from these young players. Pretty much anybody who not named Adley Rutschman, because that guy has been a monster since day one. All-star this year. If you watched him in the Home Run Derby, it was just absolutely pure brilliance. Truly phenomenal player. Switch hitter. I give the O's, I'm going to give these guys, all three of these teams, these three small market teams, I'm going to give them a percentage. I would say I'd put the O's at probably, give them a 70% chance at making a move for Shohei Ohtani. It is not out of the realm of possibility. The only qualifier I will say for all three of these teams where I have a little bit of trepidation looking at this trade is I don't know how I don't want to skew my rating or grade for a trade for Shohei based on whether or not I think that this team is willing to extend him beyond this season, because he is a free agent after this year, and that's part of why Los Angeles is really looking at making a move away from Shohei, even though he is a generational talent and should. I still don't know how. This team is it's the LA Angels are a nightmare. Just they have wasted now two generational talents back to back in Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, even though there is a bit of overlap there. Shohei's about to leave, and they gave Trout the sun and the moon in terms of a contract before players were getting that type of money. But I give the O's probably a 70% chance of making, probably actually a little bit less. I'd say 60 to 65% chance of making that trade. They should all three of these teams should be considered. All three of these teams are currently opening their window into true contention, where these teams this year and beyond should be perennial playoff teams. Now, as for Arizona, I'm going to save the Rays for last because I feel like I have a lot to say about them. So we're going to go to Arizona, where this is even more so of just such a young team. I mean, they are being buoyed by Corbin Carroll. If you guys haven't watched him, he's so much fun to watch. Absolute stud. One of my favorite things happened. He struck out on a foul ball that got past the. Excuse me, not foul ball. He struck out on a ball that passed the catcher. Ended up taking it all the way to third base on a ball that should have been a strikeout. Just absolutely incredible. They're getting a lot of great pitching. I mean, right now out of Zach Gallen. You can't forget coming off the IL today, I want to say. I think I've got him on my fantasy team in Mitch Keller. You've got great pitchers. You've got a great mix of young talent and veteran talent. And for me, Arizona is almost a half step behind the Orioles in getting this young crop of players into their major league team. I mean, you've got Carroll, you've got McCarthy, but beyond those two, we can still look into the Arizona farm system and identify another 9 to 10 players that will make a huge impact in the coming seasons for this Arizona franchise. Looking at that and looking at the way that the NL West is structured, you've got Arizona, you've got the Dodgers, you've got the Padres. I shouldn't say the Rockies because they are just. Oof. I'm not going to talk about the Rockies. I could. I'm not going to. I don't want to. They are just year in and year out. The Colorado Rockies, just rough. We're not going to talk about them. Going to go back to the Diamondbacks. I give them a little bit less of a chance. I'd say probably closer to that 40% mark in terms of making this Shohei Ohtani trade. I think that they really want to build this from the ground up fully and see what they've got in a lot of these young players before they go out and make a true win-now move for a guy like Shohei Ohtani. My thing is, between these three teams, if there's any of them that could and probably will give the money to Shohei, it would not surprise me if it's the Diamondbacks. They've given out some really, really large contracts in the past, between the Zach Greinke contract, you had the Madison Bumgarner contract. So we're not talking about a franchise that has always been reluctant to give out, the big money, if you will, for these star players. So when it comes to these three teams, I would say the Diamondbacks probably have the best chance or the highest percent chance of signing Shohei to a long-term contract, but I'm not 100% sold that they're going to break down their farm system to go out and get him. And that leaves us, my Rays, the Tampa Bay Rays. They are considered a front runner, I suppose, in the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes, which should. I'm not gonna give the Angels the complete benefit of the doubt. They could just hold on to him and get nothing, and him just leave after next season or after the end of this season, because I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Even if they have a huge turnaround, I don't see them catching up with whoever ends up being the wild card teams in the American League, because right now you've got either Baltimore or Tampa from the American League East. Those two teams are seriously, I mean, they're both 60-win teams at this point. It's ridiculous. You've got either Texas or Houston from the American League West. Both those teams are, again, they're going to be 90-plus win teams by the end of the season. The only I guess, division that is going to struggle is the Central. But then you've got every team in the American League East right now has a better record than the Central. And that includes the bottom end of the West. So I don't see the Angels making the playoffs, and that, I think, pushes the envelope a little bit more. Is going to hopefully force Art Moreno and the Angels front office to make this trade happen. Back to the Rays. This is so tough for me because I want them to continue with the formula. Keep the structure going. I mean, it's worked this long. We've gotten this far. I mean, this is the hottest start I've seen the Rays off to in pretty much forever. That said, there's been this huge slowdown, and we're still dealing with pitching injuries. We're still dealing with, the sluggish bats in the heart of July, and all these games are important. And going into the end of the season and towards the playoffs, out of all the teams that are considered contenders, the Rays arguably have the most difficult schedule. Now, I know the type of package it's probably going to end up taking to bring in a Shohei Ohtani, And I know the Rays. I don't expect Stu Sternberg to give Ohtani the contract after the season. And it's, for that reason, I almost don't want to give everything up for a pure rental, because it seems like every year that the Rays end up making a push towards the playoffs and going after rental players, it never works out in their favor, and that's truly a shame. Do I think the Rays could do it? Absolutely. They've got the farm system for it. I'm going to give them arguably the highest percent chance out of these three teams at doing it after the start they had, and looking at how they've been playing now. I'm going to give them probably a 70 to 75% chance at going after Shohei and actually getting him. At the end of the day, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up going to one of the much bigger teams that he knows is going to shell out the money for him at the end of the season. Now, speaking of big money teams, the other topic that I really wanted to get into are two teams that are likely to be sellers at this trade deadline that really shouldn't be. And they're both in the National League. We've got the San Diego Padres and the New York Mets. Looking at how these two teams' seasons have gone, it's absolutely mind-boggling. I have no idea how these two teams are as bad as they are. Both of these teams are huge money teams. With the Padres, we're talking stars on both of these teams. With the Padres, pitching staff is absolutely ridiculous, from, Blake Snell, Mike Clevenger, even into the bullpen with Josh Hader. And then on the field, Juan Soto, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts. It's name after name after. Fernando Tatis has turned into a borderline all-star outfielder at this point. It's insane how much talent these teams have, and I just truly do not understand how they are as bad as they are. And with the Mets, it just comes down to this veteran squad with a ton of pitching talent. JV, Max Scherzer. You go into the field, Polar Bear, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. We're talking about Jeff McNeil is having a terrible season, and that's a guy who last year led the National League in batting. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I don't necessarily think these teams they're going to be soft sellers. They're not going to blow it up just yet. They're not going to be the White Sox, who I fully expect to just blow it up. Another team that I guess you could say is a soft seller that, they're actually having a solid season, though, is the Chicago Cubs. I would expect them to move a couple of those, bigger guys and bigger pieces. But I don't necessarily expect them to just blow it up. But the Padres and the Mets, I don't understand how they are just so awful. They're just so bad, and I don't understand it. I expect the Padres to probably move on from one of these pitchers who's likely to, need an extension or have a player option in the coming seasons. The Mets are probably going to just move on from some of like the peripheral players. The name I keep hearing from them is a Tommy Pham. He brings out that veteran talent, that veteran kind of presence that a lot of these teams going into the playoffs and going for a World Series push really, really want. So, it wouldn't shock me if they move on from them, but it really is just kind of astounding to see how those two teams' seasons have gone. And with that, that wraps it up for this essentially quick preview of the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Expect a huge package from one of the, half the league right now who's going to make the playoffs to send a huge haul over to Los Angeles for Shohei Ohtani. And don't be surprised if we see some of these big money teams end up just selling out a bunch of these guys. With that, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really like this to be a long-standing project going forward, talking about different sports and talking about different, not just beers, any kind of drink. So if you guys have anything you guys want me to talk about or want me to try, please leave it in the comments section down below or hit me up on Twitter at KingGeorge94. And with that, we'll see you guys next time at the GR4 Sportsbar. Peace.